With less than 2 weeks until the Tempe election, till we find out the results of the election for the Arizona Coyotes and the Tempe Entertainment District, we're going to take a look at how this deal compares to two other projects recently approved around North America. We're going to get to those on today's episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Robyn Leonio alongside Carl Pavlock. On today's episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast, I want to thank everyone for making this show your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, and of course, including on YouTube. And now you'll be able to find us on the SiriusXM radio app. We're got a great show for you guys on today's episode. We are going to talk about the Tempe Arena deal, Carl, and how it compares to other deals. Because, I think, our show, other Coyotes podcasts, other Coyotes related, Coyotes focused outlets are really focusing on the fact that, the Coyotes deal is unique in the sense that it's like it is privately funded up to and for $2.1 billion. This thing is intensely privately funded.
Yes. It is not entirely perfect. I think in a lot of people's minds, it could be more privately funded. I think, we are reaching a stage where people look at billionaires and they're like, yeah, you should maybe be throwing all your money in here.
I mean, I will say this in all fairness. It is like who else, like what other private investor is going to willingly spend over $200 million to buy tainted land?
That is fair, yes. And, it is not just stadiums that get these kind of development deals. Marina Heights, which is the State Farm facility, I just learned had like a 99-year
G-Plet? Oh my God.
Reading about the chip factory that's going to be in northern Phoenix, there is substantial government subsidies from that, both from the federal government and local as well. There's a road tax that apparently is being affected. So it's kind of the world we live in.
Tempe Marketplace and the
Tempe
South
Marketplace.
Pier, the new South Pier project that's growing up on Rio Salado between Rural and McClintock. So it's all happening all over the place,
Yes.
right? And especially here in Arizona, it's a very common thing to see with G-Blitz, and the deal with and the infrastructure bonds, essentially the remediation infrastructure. That makes sense. And again, this is $2.1 billion that covers a of a project that covers not just an arena, but a theater, a practice facility, retail, apartments, hotels,
office space.
I keep forgetting what the office space, but office space, yeah.
Yeah. It is going to be a lot. There is an entire kind of ecosystem that is going to be there. It's why it's called the Tempe Entertainment District and not the Tempe Arena. There is going to be a lot. It is going to join a lot of development in that kind of area. And yeah, it is a lot of money being invested in that. And if you believe the people of the Tempe City Council, like that money is also being invested in ways that are going to alleviate many of the problems that people have.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that the project is what Mayor Corey Woods had said, and what other mayor, previous mayors and previous city council members and and officials saying that this is like the best and highest use. Like I, I'm trying to envision other uses for the land. Like it's an expensive land to remediate.
Yeah.
There are some people in the opposition that want low income housing or parks. That's just not feasible.
Yeah.
But yes, it is. But the fact that it's mostly like let's say like 95.9% privately funded. Even then, even the bonds are still like considered like private bonds
Yeah.
that get repaid through the CFD.
Yeah. And I mean, I kind of agree with some of the people. I'm like, if it was low income housing, if it was a park, that would be awesome. I think that would be a cool thing to have. But I am also a realist, and I understand that even opponents of the deal have called this the last like high end piece of property that the city of Tempe has.
Hmm.
When you look at the No campaign, um, despite the fact they'll be like, "Hey, parks is good and housing's important," they're like, "We should be maximizing the property tax that we get from this."
Yeah, I
That
mean,
is ultimately there.
who's to say there won't be a couple parks embedded within the entertainment district? It is a big chunk of land.
Yeah, yeah. But like, if you wanted to turn it into like a 14-acre park, no one in power who has any kind of say over it agrees with you. I am sorry. And I do not think that there is enough of a groundswell of citizens to do that. I think it's cool in theory. I wish we lived in a world where we could demand something like that, but it's not feasible. And it does kind of make me sad. I often think about what else could be there, and I really don't know. Like the only thing I could think is like putting like, doubling down, tripling down on the office space, which is not a good idea right now. Just is not. Uh
No.
or make it just luxury condos, which I think is like depressing. Uh
Right. I mean, like the idea of having condos there is, that's another way to make money because it's market rate. It's going people are going to be spending. People will 100% move into that spot. Like there's no doubt about it.
I think I read once that luxury student housing, which basically anything in Tempe, North Tempe especially, could be considered student housing,
Right.
is one of the most recession proof industries because there's always going to be wealthy people, there's always going to be college kids, like, but any kind of condo developer, they're going to want just as many concessions as the Coyotes, probably more so.
Yeah. So it's amazing that the Coyotes are willing to, take as much of the private and risk of their own private money financially on this deal, which makes it amazing when we compare it to other deals. We're going to talk about first up when we in a little bit we are going to talk about and compare it to the deal staying within the hockey world. We're going to compare it to the recent arena deal announced by the City of Calgary. We're going to get to that all in just a moment, but first, a quick word from our sponsors on the show. And for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure to make sure that those parts fit right at the first time around. Just add your ride to my garage and look for the green check to know that your part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when you have the right parts that are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. So let's continue, Carl, on this episode of of Locked On Coyotes. As we compare, we talked about the arena deal for the Arizona Coyotes, mostly privately funded, with the best and highest use of the deal, um, of that land in such and such. And the no campaign of the Coyotes deal is focused so heavily on those Jeeplets, right, and tax breaks for the wealthy, and or just handouts for the wealthy. If we're going to talk about handouts for the wealthy, let's talk about these other two deals. We're going to start with Calgary, Carl,
Okay.
because a lot of public money is being used for these two deals we're going to talk about, starting with Calgary, of course. They got a $1.2 billion project that has got uh, what nearly 400 million in public funding.
Yeah, so it's 1.2 billion. I can do the breakdown if you'd like.
Yes, let's hear the full breakdown.
All right, so Calgary, the Flames, CSEC will contribute 356 million to the project, including 40 million upfront and 17 million per year, with a 1% increase per year over 35 years. So that's what the Flames are going to be doing. The city will contribute 537.3 million dollars to fund the development. That's including parking, an enclosed plaza, and a portion of an additional community rink that's going to be constructed. The province of Alberta is going to be contributing 330 million, with 300 million earmarked specifically for transportation improvements, land and infrastructure costs, and 30 million going to the rink. Yeah, the Calgary Stampede are also going to be involved in land sales and stuff. Those are kind of the major roles. It's close to what, 867 million of a 1.2 billion dollar deal being done by the city or the province.
Yeah, it is amazing to see that it's that the majority of the funding here is public money. One, and two, and I'm going to go back, Carl, to what the No campaign was saying about the Tempe Entertainment District, is saying stop subsidizing stadiums,
Yeah.
right? Stadiums, arenas, ballparks, whatever. Um, it's hard to make the argument against when it comes to the Tempe Entertainment District because it's a full-on entertainment district. There's more money to be made there.
Yeah.
Here, we're just talking about an arena and an adjacent
Community
community
rink, I
rink.
guess. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, is there a lot of money to be made? Is there going to be a lot of ways for that money to come back? It's
Yeah.
that's
Not
that's why a lot of people were being a lot or starting to become, you know, upset at public money for stadiums because you look at it, it's just like what's going on.
and and we're seeing this. I think I see a more substantial backlash to the Flames arena than I do the Coyotes. There are, of course, defenders who say like, "Hey, the Saddle Dome is really old. It's not good. Like, it needs to be upgraded." But you were getting a lot of people be like, "Why is this why is so little of the funding being contributed by the Flames?" And also, you're getting Edmonton people who are pissed that the province is getting involved because apparently that didn't happen when they got their new arena. So you love that inner province rivalry. Be like, why do they get funding for this?
Was Rogers Place? Is it Rogers Place? Yeah, Rogers Place, mostly private.
I think um
Rogers, it's Rogers.
the Cats group looks like they paid a lot of money. Um, I'm on their.
Because I think that's the really important thing. If you compare it, I can get why there people will be really upset about it.
All right.
Um,
So looking at it, I'm on Edmonton for an agreement. I hope this is the right one. Cats Group paying 132.5 million. Um, it's going to be paid to the city as rent, um, with 19.7 as cash. The city contributed 226 million, and then 125 million collected through a ticket surcharge, which is kind of what a G plet is. Like, if you think about it, like it's
so it's interesting. 'Cause I'm actually looking at what the final funding was. And $231 million from a community revitalizations levy, a CRL, which is essentially the equivalent to what we're experiencing, where we're going to see in the Tempe Entertainment District with the CFD, the Community Facilities District.
there's just so many ways to talk about funding for these things. But yeah, what did you think when you saw the Calgary deal?
I mean, it made me think of a way to think of a couple things. One, um, the idea that, like, hey, look, we're comparing what the Coyotes are doing versus what the Flames are doing, in the sense that's like, yo, like, you want to be able to, like, to see a good return on an investment. Cool. Maybe it works in Calgary. Maybe it does because it's Canada. You have the fans up there, but at the same time, it's still going to take a long time, because if you're focusing on just the arena, it's it's hard for me to think that that's the case. And it made me even more comfortable with knowing that the Coyotes are in a great situation right now, but what they're doing with the private funding.
Yeah, I I mean I can definitely agree with that. I do think the Flames are going to be a good draw. When I see people say that the Saddle Dome needs to be replaced somehow,
I mean,
I
I
can
get it.
appreciate that.
It's the second oldest arena in the NHL, next to MSG, but MSG gets renovated every like 10 years.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like Madison Square Garden. It is an
It is
iconic
Oh,
landmark.
it's iconic. You can't mess with Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, so and I don't necessarily want any city to lose their franchise. I know what rumors like that can do. Um, but that being said, it does seem like they are putting so little of their money in it. And, you know, I can understand people wanting rich people, especially billionaires, to pay more for stadiums. I completely agree. Um, I think this is getting a pretty significant backlash. I don't know if it's going to be enough to cancel it, but you're definitely seeing a lot of pissed off people.
Oh, and rightfully so, because we've seen, like, you know we've seen situations have happened with stadiums and public money towards facilities time and time and time again. Um, and there are some situations in which, let's say, a sports team leaves that facility and it's still not 100% paid off.
Yeah.
And, like, so now it's an empty facility that taxpayers are still paying for.
Yeah, like I mean, when you look at that deal, it's over 35 years. Are the Flames going to be around for 35 years? I'm sure they like to think so.
Hmm.
I don't necessarily see any kind of reason they wouldn't be, other than their owners were like threatening to leave if they didn't get a new stadium.
Yeah, and
Um,
here's something I'll add, and because we're talking about comparing it to the Coyotes deal and everything like that. Um, and I'm not sure what protections are put in place. And yeah, sure, the chance of the Flames ever leaving Calgary or with the new arena are incredibly low. I don't think it will happen.
yeah,
Um, but whether or not they want to leave that arena and maybe do something again within Calgary, that's a whole nother story. Um, these comparing it to what's going on here though in Arizona, remember that Gary Bettman said that the Coyotes will be on a 30-year non-relocation deal.
Yeah.
That's the length of the 30-year GBLET that's going to be on the arena, essentially. So like there you and you got that community facilities district. It's gonna get paid back. Like, by the time at the end of those 30 years, it should already be paid back.
Yeah.
All the bonds for the infrastructure.
I would like to think so, and I mean, just looking at the growth of Tempe, I think that that entertainment district is going to be around 30 years from now, and it's going to be generating, money for the city. These are two very different circumstances, but I do think comparing the Coyotes deal with the Flames deal, the Coyotes deal has a much stronger basis for, you know, acceptance by the community because, as we've said, concerns about funding for stadiums are legitimate, but I think the
Yep.
Coyotes is a good one.
Yep. But like you said, of course, the Coyotes deal isn't perfect. There's still a lot of backlash on some elements. You can make arguments for and against those elements, but it's gonna happen. There's gonna be opposition. Um, But that gets us into. I do want to segue into our other comparison, Carl, because the next one is, to me, I think, a really even more interesting financing deal for a uh, for a stadium. And again, for a stadium, not really a entertainment district, as we mentioned, going on with Arizona, and that is the NFL's Tennessee Titans. They got something absolutely insane. That is a what is it? A $2.1 billion stadium.
Yes, it is absolutely insane. Uh, Reading here, the city council approved uh, the authority to issue 760 million in bonds, which combines with 500 million in state bonds for more than 1.2 billion in public financing. That is
Why?
yeah, that is a lot of money. And I'm not a football person. I don't want to say too much, but that seems like way too much money.
And here's something. Right? I'm looking at this as those bonds I'm looking at an article from the Tennessean. Those bonds we paid using diverted sales tax in and around the stadium, as well as a 1% hotel tax increase that could bring upwards of 10 million each year. That's not a lot of money to bring back.
And I mean, I don't exactly know what's going on in Nashville. That is not a city I've ever been to. I hear it's pretty okay. I was in Memphis. It was not bad. But do they really think that they need that kind of commitment to the Titans to kind of like survive? Because that's a lot of money. That's a lot of like money going to one thing.
Yeah, it is. It does absolutely, you know, it baffles me. And what I think is even more so, and I'm looking at the full deal here. Again, through the article in the Tennessean, um, it says right here the Titans will contribute, themselves $840 million in private financing, but of that private financing, Carl, includes $200 million in NFL loans.
Oh, can you imagine if like the NHL loaned the Coyotes more money?
Oh, people would go ballistic.
Yeah, yeah,
No doubt about it. People were like, why are you subsidizing this poverty franchise? You
yeah.
shouldn't be doing this kind of crap. And and to see the NFL do that for its teams, I mean, that's and in all in quote all fairness, the NFL generates so much revenue.
A
It is
lot more.
insane. So
Yeah.
they can afford to do so. But the fact that the Titans, we're talking an NFL franchise, is taking a loan from the NFL and only contributing $140 million when the owner of the Coyotes, currently rated, the least value, like the quote least valuable team in the NHL, uh, is putting up you $2.1 billion in private financing.
Yeah. I found it astonishing because I'm reading the Associated Press piece. This topped 850 million committed from New York for the Buffalo Bills $1.5 billion stadium that they're getting. That is like, you really get the sense that the Coyotes ownership made a deal where they were not going to get insane amounts of criticism, because sure, there is a backlash. I think we're seeing that. I do think that the like, if it was laid out like this, if they were getting $850 million like up front from the city of Tempe, like people would riot in the streets.
Yeah, and I'm gonna make another comparison to another stadium really quick, because you look at what other teams across sports are doing. You wonder. Look, the Titans are putting up less than $1 billion of their own money for their stadium, when another team within the same league put up $5 billion of their own money to privately build their own stadium, and I'm talking about the Los Angeles Rams. Like, that is a lot of money for private financing, and they did it. Why aren't other teams doing that?
Uh, because they know that they don't have to. Ultimately that is it. Like, and look no further than like what's happening to the Oakland A's. Like,
That's sad.
I think every single team that's going to be negotiating, like especially if they're a beloved franchise with like massive like impact on the community, they could be like, we can go someplace else. I do wonder if we are going to see more cities, more states, more provinces call that bet or call that bluff, because it seems like pricing is only going up and up for these things.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, what like I mentioned, look, SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles was $5 million.
Yeah,
That is just absolutely ridiculous. It cost. To be fair, again, that was in Los Angeles. And if we know anything about California, everything's more expensive there. Um,
absolutely.
but you see that, then you see what the Coyotes are doing in private financing. Yes, they are using some public funds for the remediation, but that's as expected. And then you look at the two deals we're talking right now. We talked about today, Calgary, and Nashville. And the Tennessee Titans. Like, what? Like, it's absolutely baffling that we continue to do this, and people still make fun of the Coyotes for trying to stay here in Arizona off
Yeah,
private financing. It is amazing.
yeah. It is definitely like, I like to look at these things on a spectrum, and the Coyotes deal isn't perfect, but it's definitely on the better end. And what we are seeing with these other ones is on the other end. If you have legitimate reasons why you do not think the proposition should pass, I am open to that. But I think you have to acknowledge that this is one of the better deals you're going to see in sports. Like, especially in Arizona.
We've
Like,
only seen a deal like this. We've never seen a deal like this in Arizona before. You
yeah,
look at all the other arenas and stadiums and ballparks here in the state. they are all on have been publicly financed, portioned, and on lifetime Jeeplets.
I do wonder what is going to be happening with the Diamondbacks because
With the idea, because that's an interesting point you made. What's going on in Chase Field? We know the Diamondbacks are gonna go on and leave and do something like get a new facility somewhere. But what do they do? The Coyotes set the bar for Arizona. Should this thing pass,
potentially.
potentially, like, what are they gonna do? Like, how are they gonna handle it?
I don't know. I feel like if Phoenix loses their team, their baseball team, like that is going to be a very bad look. And as we have seen from the city of Phoenix, they do not like to look bad, which is
Nope.
why they try and do things against people who make them look bad. But I really don't know. I hope that the Coyotes set like a new bar and that we make the teams afterwards like clear that bar and things just keep improving. Um, because where we were at before the Coyotes, deal with Tempe was in a much worse place. And if it does pass, I think that puts a little bit of pressure on how the Diamondbacks negotiate. It could have a good impact on the entirety of sports in Arizona.
I do hope, on the like, as a closing note here, Carl, like, in regards to Arizona sports, that the Arizona Diamondbacks stay in downtown Phoenix, because I feel like it's good for them, it's good for Phoenix. And I know, you might be getting some people might be mad at me for saying what's good for Phoenix, especially with what they're doing with what's for the Coyotes deal, but look, they've got like, downtown Phoenix is a fun place to be at when you're getting ready to go to a Diamondbacks game. I'm gonna be going to one next week, and like, it's just I like being down there. I kind of hope they stayed. Obviously, Chase Field needs to be fixed. It needs stuff to take care of, but of course, most of that conversation is more for the Locked On Diamondback show, which we highly recommend you guys listen to.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, maybe we could do a crossover and just talk arena drama.
Ooh, good idea. That'd be a really fun conversation. We'll get there. We'll see.
Yeah, once they start getting details out, then that'd be the time because right now it's just a lot of questions.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Any final thoughts you want to go, before we close things off?
I do think that it is a good thing that the public is paying attention to this issue. I just want to say that I am strongly in favor of the public deciding things. It's something that wasn't addressed. I am glad that this is going to a vote for Tempe citizens. When the Calgary deal did not, the Nashville deal did not. The citizens did not have a direct say. I think that people should have a direct say in this sort of thing.
And even with this being a privately financed deal, at least for Tempe, that they still get a say,
Yep,
which I'm all for. I think you and I are on that same wavelength, that the people should have a say of what gets put in their cities, like, especially with
absolutely,
major projects.
absolutely.
Anyways, though, that's going to be it for today's episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave a review. Like, comment, subscribe if you have yet to already. We are available everywhere you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. And once again, as another reminder, we are also now going to be on the Sirius XM radio app, so you can find us on there. Just be sure to search up Locked On Coyotes. Don't forget also to interact with us on social media, though. We are on Facebook, facebook.com/LockedOnCoyotes, and on Instagram at LockedOnCoyotes, on Twitter at LO_Coyotes. I'm personally at Robyn_Leano. Carl Pavlock is at 5 for Helen. Interact with us, ask a question you might have, we might answer right back, or on a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's episode. Hope you guys are staying safe out there. Hope you guys are staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.